the SEC had asked Coinbase to stop trading everything besides Bitcoin. And quick recap of what is actually happening. Ladies and gentlemen, the SEC charged Coinbase with violating federal securities laws, alleged it was operating as a broker exchange and clearinghouse for unregistered securities, 13 crypto assets, but not Bitcoin. But Coinbase also offers over 200 different tokens besides Bitcoin. So they just kind of took a dart and threw it at 13 and called them secured, unregistered securities. Coinbase said that the SEC's actions violated due process and constitutes in an abuse of discretion. And the latest, the SEC asked them to stop trading all cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin prior to suing the exchange. So it's kind of not news, but it is news, but it is. Also, probably the biggest thing for me here is that coin shares fell around 10% on this news. Price has since recovered, but to me, that kind of sounds like a market manipulation. It kind of sounds that the SEC shouldn't have approved Coinbase's application to go public if they were going to slam their entire business model in the future. But what do I know? I'm just an idiot on the internet. I want to say Zach's hand was up first.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, first of all, this is all attributed to Brian Armstrong, right? CEO saying this. Definitely sort of an escalation, I think, in the war of words between SEC Chair Gary Gensler and Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. But this definitely lends some credence to what people in the space had been hearing out of the SEC and Gary Gensler's personal view that all things but Bitcoin were not were securities, right? And I think maybe we're hearing this from Brian Armstrong, because there's a little bit of counterfactuals now. Gary Gensler's stance that all things that are not Bitcoin are securities is not looking so great in the wake of the Ripple judgment, in which that judge at least said, "Hey, it's not the assets themselves; it's the nature of the transaction in which those assets are involved." Right. So suddenly, that public statement that SEC Chair Gary Gensler has made is not looking so great. So I can understand why Brian Armstrong may see this as an opportune time to put this out there into the public record. So I think that is just worth situating this story in the context of that fight. And also, again, the Ripple decision, which many in the industry saw as not just a partial victory for Ripple, but a partial victory for the bigger fight and potentially for Coinbase, right? So I think that's the context in which these comments should be viewed. But obviously, there's all sorts of other stuff to touch on. I'll toss it straight to Jen on that, actually.
Yeah, I can see why firms in the US are confused when I read these comments from Brian Armstrong. He says that the SEC asked them to delist everything except Bitcoin. And then we have the actual lawsuit brought by the SEC where everything except Bitcoin was not listed as a security. I think there were about a dozen tokens listed there. And so that's already contradictory. I want to get the SEC's comments in that were noted in the Financial Times article. They said in the course of an investigation, the staff may share its own view as to what conduct may raise questions for the commission under the securities law. I think that's interesting, right? So they're saying each individual person from the SEC can share their own views, but that may not be the overarching view of the SEC. That becomes very confusing, right? And comes back to the need for clear rules, clear guidelines. Wendy's sigh, I think, encapsulates this beautifully. It is, as more and more information comes out, it's very easy to see why Coinbase and other firms in the US are confused, because the people that they're dealing with from the SEC may share a view that is not more broadly shared at the SEC. Someone else may come in and say something completely different, and we have a back and forth where we can't actually get any clarity. We can't move forward. There are businesses like Coinbase who are publicly listed, who are saying we were doing everything right, or so we thought, but now we're not, and now we're being sued. And so I don't know. It's just, I want to sign now, Wendy.
You're getting sued. I'm getting sued.
I will give it to Will.
Sued.
Everybody's getting
sued. We're all getting sued.
We're all getting sued.
No.
Suing of the sue of the sue.
A big lawsuit at the end of the show, so stick around for that one. Oh. Good news there. Maybe? Possibly. No, I agree with what you guys are saying. This reminded me of what happened with Patrick McHenry and Gary Gensler, I believe about a month or 2 months ago, when Gary Gensler went before Congress talking about how they need more funding for the SEC. And Patrick McHenry really grilled Gary Gensler at the time, talking about ETH and saying, is this a security or is it not? And they went back and forth for quite a while. It became sort of a viral clip. And the basis of that, again, is anything besides Bitcoin security in the eyes of Gary Gensler? Obviously, it seems to be a split house within the SEC. have one opinion. Some of the chairmen, such as Hester Peirce or Crypto Mom, definitely have their own opinion. And then there's this opinion from Gary Gensler on Bitcoin, where he said in multiple interviews that he thinks only Bitcoin is a non-security crypto asset. So that just makes it very confusing for all these companies who are trying to build in the space. We just continue to see tweets of people moving overseas because they don't want to deal with all the stuff that's happening within the United States.